age ago, the beating heart of our people was a king who knew only victory. He wanted nothing more than an honorable death on the battlefield. Yet, none could match him, and so he wandered the earth, becoming lost in time and tide. Then we too lost our honest purpose, while silk-clad men sat upon the throne. But tremble now, all cities that lay under the stars, for out of the shadows and mists of the land of promise, our courage has been rekindled, our heart has returned, and the world will burn.
All right, how's everybody doing tonight? I almost started talking without adding myself to the stage. This is the kind of mentality that I have. I can't even understand my own stream sometimes. Anyways, if anybody can give me, someone could give me a shout out in the chat, let me know that you can hear me and that I'm not speaking to myself like I was a few minutes ago. All right, audio is good. Thank you very much, Sound Engraver. For anybody who is new to our Wednesday, Make Comics Fun Again, I just talk about comics or something about comics for probably 15, maybe 20 minutes, and then I'll read the chat. So if anybody has any questions for me in the chat, just make sure you tag me in it or put a question mark there, and I'll go through the chat after I'm done with my rant on comics, my fun rant, hopefully, on comics for the next 15, 20 minutes. So today I wanted to talk about multimedia promotion because as you just witnessed, you just saw my trailer for Crom the Destroyer. I loved doing that trailer. It was the most fun thing I've done besides writing comic books themselves. To me, I think the future of comics is multimedia, and the comics for me always have to be at the center of a comic book. I don't know, promotion at it. The comic book is the most important thing. But the promotion doesn't have to be in comic book format. It doesn't have to be in print format. I think multimedia is the way to go when you're doing promotion. And as I said, when I did that trailer for Crom the Destroyer, I loved doing that. That was the funnest thing in the world. And right now, the reason why I'm talking about this is because I'm doing the trailer for Fade to Blue. And quite honestly, I started, it was just the other day. I had ideas about what I was going to do with the trailer, and I just started to play around with it, and then all of a sudden it started to come together. And as it did, I worked on it. I didn't even realize, it was probably 10 o'clock at night when I started. And by the time I realized what time it was, the sun was up, and I was still working on the stupid thing because it sucked me in. It was so fun to see this thing come to life. Quite honestly, that's what it is. And I think that's part of the multimedia, well, not milieu, but what is it? The attraction of multimedia and bringing your characters to life and bringing your world to life. And the funny thing is that I find that this helps my writing in multiple ways. It's the exact same as working with my artist, because I've worked with a number of different artists for different books, and even for some of the same books. For Thomas Valiant, I worked with 3 artists at least, and I let my artists have enough reign so that if they want to put something in that isn't what I had intended, I'm not going to tell them to change it unless it's an absolute necessity of a key point for my storytelling. And if it isn't, and they come up with something and I can fit it in, then I'm going to fit it in and it's going to change the story. And I allow the flexibility of that to happen. And it happened with, let's say, one of my characters' discs. She was basically supposed to have just a teleportation kind of disc which she could use to go to any other place on the planet. But one of the artists who was doing just some promotional material for me, when I used her ability to have her be able to walk on air, basically, because she could create discs and they would be at different places and she can suspend them in the air, but underneath them there are rock. And then the artist did something where the rocks actually came down like a stalagmite underneath the disc. And thought to myself, well, she could use that. That wasn't what I intended, and I shook my head at it at first. But then I thought to myself, I could use that. I could incorporate that into the power of this character. And the same thing I find with bringing your character to life, especially with not only different kinds of artists and different kinds of artistic interpretations of your character, but when you do it with multimedia, with something like building a trailer, it has drastically changed some of my characters and changed the feel for some of my books. Again, working on Fade to Blue right now. I do have a limitation of what I have to work with and what I can, well, not only what I can work with, but what I'm able to work with. I do limit myself, although I'm going to probably start using much more professional material and programs in order to bring my trailers to life. For the last Crown the Destroyer, both the trailers had actual voice actors, which I paid for both of those, and that was something unique. For the Fade to Blue, I don't have any voice actors, but I do use, it's a bit outdated now, maybe about a year outdated, multimedia promotion. I'm not even sure. It's Filmora, basically. And I find that Filmora now is going in the direction of AI and things like that, which is helpful. But at the same time, the limitations, I always say, is what brings so much more depth to writing and to your ability to get things out and to bring it to life. Quite honestly, I have tried writing in different formats all over my life. I've written novel manuscripts, I've written plenty of short stories, but it wasn't until I got to comics that I really found what I should have been doing all along. And to me, it was the limitations that allowed everything to flourish, because I know I only have a certain amount of pages I can work with, because that's how long the book is. These pages need to work in a very specific way. I can only put so many panels on a page, etc., etc. Those limitations make writing so much easier, in my opinion. And so it is with creating multimedia, for me anyways. Like I said, I'm using a Filmora program, which is a couple years outdated right now, and it does have limitations. But again, the limitations, I use those limitations in order to try to mimic something which I find fascinating within, say, editing for television or movies, and see if I can recreate it. And if I can't recreate it, then I'll recreate it as best I can. And when I try to recreate something as best I can with imperfect tools, I get something unique. But anyways, my point is that I love the fact that bringing characters to life and bringing the world to life through different kinds of media is something that is enjoyed by people and does bring in an audience. This is some of the things that Chuck Dixon and Graham are doing over at, what is it, Spinner Rack, I think it is, that they're trying to do. They're trying to incorporate different kinds of media in the promotion of their comics and even in the storytelling of the comics. Now, I think that's going a little bit too far. To me, the comic is the main storytelling vehicle. You got to keep that. I mean, if I wanted to go into, I don't know, television or movies or shorts on the internet or things like that, or animation, I would go into that direction. And I don't think that comics would have much to do with that, but I want to do comics. So comics need to be the center of your storytelling. So I think what some of the things that they're going with the fact that sometimes they're going to take their characters supposedly and possibly put them into a video game, and that will incorporate part of the story. And I'm thinking to myself, no, that's a little too much. That's diluting the message I guess we'll go back to the Marshall McLuhan idea of the medium is your message, and you're diluting your message by diluting the impactfulness of the medium. But if you use multimedia promotion, as I've been talking about, it is something which I think only complements the fact that you're telling a story within a very static medium, but a beautiful one like comic books. And I would love to find different ways in promoting this kind of storytelling through multimedia before and with um, my actual books. This is some of the things that I always think about, because let's go with my first graphic novel, which is Thomas Valiant #1. There's a bit of a pre-story to Thomas Valiant #1, but you're never going to get it in the book itself. It's not in any way, actually. I won't even say really. It's not in any way connected to the story itself. You don't have to know it at all. It's just going to flesh out your world in a completely different direction, but allow a little peek into it. For me, the trailer that I did for Thomas Valiant #1, which was pretty crude, still in my mind incorporates part of the story that was untold within the book itself, because the trailer occurs before the book actually happens. You have Thomas Valiant and some of his team looking for a base of operations. And this is how I started to bring in the audience to see what the characters are like, and to go through basically exposition in a multimedia way, which was much more palatable, I thought, than trying to do it within the pages of a comic book, certainly the first pages of a #1 comic book. So that's the kind of, it's not really the only thing that I can think in my head to call it is almost fourth wall breaking, but it's not really. But it is breaking down the walls of the limitations of your book, so that you can expand your world in different directions, and then not just hype up the book and the expectations for the book, but flush out your world. And I think that's very, very important. I know that a lot of other comic producers in the indie comic space that I'm in, anyways, they just want to tell one single story and then move on to a different world. That's not what I want to do. And there are some people like me, not too many. John's Longbox is obviously one of them, but I want to flush out a world. And each of these stories that I write, each of the characters and their specific story within the comics that I have, they're all part of the same world. Whether they're in the same time frame within that world is going to be dependent on which book you're reading. But at the same time, I'm building a world. I'm not just building a story in a comic. I'm building a world. And you don't have to read all of my comics in order to enjoy that world, but the world becomes much more something you get into, like a hot bath, when you have all of this backstory and all of this ability to know that your world is much greater than this one book and even this set of books. And the multimedia, which again, I would say not exclusively, but to a great extent, most fundamentally should be used for promotion. And if you can incorporate the world building into that as well, that becomes something that your audience, I would enjoy as an audience. Okay. I talked to Mike Barron a long time ago, and since then on John's channel over John's Longbox again. But Mike's idea is the fact that write a book that you want to read. And that's exactly what I want to do. When I'm doing this, when I'm creating these short little films, as it were, which well, for the first ones that I did were much too long. But I've realized that, a minute 30 is absolute max. You can't have anything more than that for promotional material. That being said, I am working within those limitations and pushing limitations in different directions in order to, for Fade to Blue, to show my character and what his life is going to be like and what you're going to see on the page, with a flash forward, basically. But anyways, this is my spiel. That's 15 minutes of my spiel talking about multimedia promotion. I think that it is the wave of the future for comics, and how Well, basically, the mainstream comics are dying because they can't do any such thing. They tried to do such things, but they just don't have a sense of the fandom and the building up of a world. They're trying to sell a product, and that's it. You should be able to try to sell a product and cater to your fan base at the same time. That should be in there, and so it is something that needs to be sculpted, something that needs to have actual meaning. And when you have things like, I don't know, the now defunct Marvel web series about making food based on Marvel characters' names, that's not working. That's not promotion. That's just ridiculous tripe. Same with the whole cosplay thing, where they're promoting cosplayers and all this. They had so many things on Marvel that I used to cover, and the Marvel Twitter site and the Marvel site itself. They thought of them as promotional material, as multimedia promotional material, but they never landed with anybody. Except for a very small minority, and that's no way to grow your business, no way to grow your characters, no way to grow your story. You have to obviously give your audience what they want, not tell them what they want, but at the same time, create something unique. And a lot of, if we're looking at, let's just say, the stuff like the Amazing Spider-Man cartoon that just came out a couple of weeks ago, that's not unique. That's just a rehashing of the same old under a Marvel banner. It's ridiculous AI generated cartoon images that are stiff, and anybody who had access to a fairly high functioning computer could have made this, or a better version of this, within the last 10 years minimum. And it is uniqueness. That's what I think I'm trying to get at. It is the uniqueness, not only of the limitations, but of also building a world and incorporating the sense of that world into what you're promoting, that allows your audience to grasp onto it and to think of it as something I want to buy. Anyways, I'll go through and see who's here first, and then we'll go through the comments and see if anybody has any questions for me. Pedro dipped in and then dipped out. He said he had to go. Jewel is here. Michael is here. George is here. Jimmy, how you doing? Manny is here. So is Zach Dan, raiding over from John's Longbox channel, which I was just on. Let's see. Gaming Center is here. How you doing? I think you raided over as well. Greg is here, and Gordon Goodbrother is here. Sound Engraver, who shouted me out right at the beginning, is here. Nice to see you, Sound Engraver. Let's see. Scrolling down. Ryan is here, and Tony is here. How you doing? Alessandro is here as well. A lot of people here, a lot of regulars. Great to see. Let's see. Alessandro has a question. Alessandro says, RJ, if you are still in touch with the Lotus Eaters, you should recommend reading Chesterton novel, The Flying Inn, which is a comic dystopia of an Islamic Britain. Really? I have, let's see, I have all of the Father Brown stuff, and I never actually heard about this story before. I don't have, obviously, the complete works of Chesterton, but that would be a good idea. Alessandro, if you're on Twitter, the best person to tweet that at would probably be, who would it be? It wouldn't be Carl. It would probably be, let's see. I'll go over to my Twitter here and just look at it for 1 second. Give me a second here. I'll go through my private messages. Probably Connor. Yeah, probably Connor. And he is on Twitter. But yeah, I can see why you're asking me, though, because quite honestly, I prompted Carl to read Dialectic of Enlightenment a number of different times, and he actually has read it. He did a video on it just last week, I think. Not really on the book itself, but just on the regular YouTube was a book where he mentions it, and the disenchantment of the world that you see within what he was talking about was Warhammer. But yeah, I'm glad he read that book, because that is an influential book that, if you want to understand your, let's just say, your critical theorists, which are basically the 60s version of your communist revolutionaries, then that's the best place for me. And for me to understand it, because it was based on storytelling. Anyways, Sound Engraver, thank you very much for the super chat. Thank you. Where did I get the music from the trailer? Where I was actually going to Sound Engraver, I was looking for something that I could copy, because what I was going to do was I was going to take a basic pattern of a song and just whistle it myself and use that for the backdrop, because it needed to be a sad, but at the same time, very old timey kind of sound for the music. I didn't actually end up doing that. I found basically just something that I used as a backdrop so far. Whether or not I'm going to use it, I don't even know. It's basically free to use classical music. But again, my story is set in 1929. So again, I was trying to find something of that era to use as music, because I wanted to invoke that kind of feeling within the trailer itself. I haven't quite found the exact thing that I'm going to use yet. But again, I wanted to find something that had actually had a very 1929 feel to it. So that's where I'm going with that. John is here. How you doing, John? John's Longbox. Let's see. We'll scrolling down. Sound Engraver says, just one condition, RJ, no AI assisted trailers. Well, let's just say I tried fiddling around with something. Let's see if I can upload it. Okay, I tried fiddling around with something. I'm with you. I don't want to put too much AI assistance in there at all, because again, I think that will steal from the unique qualities of the limitations, basically. Although I tried to use some of the editing software with the help of the AI just to see how it would work, and it really doesn't work. I find it's like maybe 1 in 20 would give me something that I could actually use, and that's not good enough for me. I just I just threw up my hands and said, I'll just do it myself. Like, I want to put a little bit of movement in here, put a little movement in there, and after a while, it's like, yeah, the computer is so stupid that after 20 tries, it's just no good anymore. I only got 1 out of 20 that I could use. Let me see. I apologize. I'm trying to find some of this stuff that I was working on and see if I can upload it. Let's see. Give me 1 second here. I don't know if it'd be too big or if it's uploading or not. So, let's see. I apologize too. When I'm in the media assets of that you use with StreamYard, then I can't read any of the comments. Let's see. I don't even think this will work, but it's the wrong. I don't know. It won't fit on the screen. But anyways, I did put a couple of things with AI assistance, basically taking the art that I have from my artist and then putting in some movement into to see if it would work. Whether or not I'm going to keep it in, I'm not entirely sure. But I certainly don't like using the AI assisting. Maybe it'll change. I don't know. But it's not so much AI assistance. It's more the ability to give something unique to the scene. If the AI can't do that, then, and I find that the AI can't understand what unique is, so I probably won't be using it very much at all. Let's see. Zach Dan says, what do you think R stands for? Obviously for robot. Obviously, I'll agree, Zach Dan. R is for a robot. Yes, R is for a robot. Let's see. Scrolling down. Jimmy says, so no Crom the Destroyer, the video game. I'm saying that if I get to a point where the property is so beloved that they want to build a video game around it, sure, no problem. But it's not going to impact my storytelling in what I am writing as stories and as graphic novels. Because for Crom the Destroyer, that's a multimedia platform right there. Because even in the original campaign itself, you can get both stories that I have written, which are standalone stories that are fairly short, and the graphic novel. So there's different mediums that I'm using in order to tell that story. Although they're connected, they're not necessarily connected. You don't need one to understand the other. Let's see. Alessandro says, RJ, for the graphic novel I'm working on, I was thinking of adding a setting atlas as a supplement. But that would be good. To me, anyways. I don't know about other people. I find that some of the things that I just put in my campaigns offhand, to almost not really to pad it, but to give my audience a little bit more, were the things that just took off, like the cards for Thomas Valiant. Like that just took on a life of its own. I thought, I could do cards. That would work. It would have helped me be able to, give the stats of my characters and a little bit of their backstory. It's not necessary to read when you're going to read the book itself, but you can get it with the campaign. And I found that, people loved having cards. So the same might be there with the Atlas. I don't know, because for all of my campaigns so far, they have maps in them, right? Thomas Valiant #1 had a map which you could get of the city, of Rubicon City, which is where it's set, which is one of the posters you can get. Again, not necessary for the story, but you could get it. For the Valiant Heroes, there is several different maps in the back part of the floppies, if you bought them as floppies, because if you buy the graphic novel, you get a bunch of extra pages and extra story, which isn't in the floppies. But if you buy the floppies, you get a couple of extra things within each book, and some of those are maps. So I think I love maps, and a lot of people love maps too. So Alessandro, you might have a winning idea there. Let's see. Scrolling down, Tony says, RJ, do you think DEI in pop culture is well and truly gone? No, it's not well and truly gone. It's not even close to gone. It's being hidden. That's about it right now. But if you look at the stuff that's coming out and the statements about the things coming out from Marvel Comics still, because I do still follow that a little bit here and there. I don't do very many videos on them anymore because I don't know if people are interested in that kind of video anymore. But no, it's not gone. And there's no way you could get rid of it entirely from something like Marvel Comics without destroying the entire company. It would just fall to pieces because it's all they have right now. It's the same. Think about it as what's going on with the Democratic Party right now. The Democratic Party has basically decided it will drive itself into the ground, drive itself to death on identity politics. It just can't get out of that. What do you call it? I don't even know. There's a thing. What the heck is the name of it? It's like an ant loop, where ants get stuck walking around in a circle, and they keep walking around in the circle, following their own trail because they follow a scent trail, and more join them until they all just walk around in a circle until they die. And that's the Democratic Party, it seems, right now. And that would be some of these companies that produce pop culture. If they tried to extract themselves from DEI right now, they would simply die. It would be like flushing a toilet. Everything would go down. Let's see. Scrolling down. Gordon says, the mainstream doesn't want to sell stories. It wants to sell lifestyles. You are 100% right on that, Gordon. I did plenty of videos about this about 6 years ago, probably, when I covered one of the interviews that Son Amanat was doing for, I can't even remember what it was. It was an interview that was also a video interview, which she had done with a major company or something like that. Anyways, she was talking about the fact that it's a lifestyle brand. And I had several videos on lifestyle brands. Marvel is a lifestyle brand. All they want to sell is lifestyles. Lifestyle. And I went very deep into the explanation of lifestyle branding and understanding what it is and trying to figure out what these people were doing and what they wanted. Lifestyle branding is one thing, and what these people think lifestyle branding is completely another. If, like, say, for lifestyle branding, what is it? Some of the ideas of lifestyle branding would be Harley Davidson using using its money to set up, I don't know, rest booths for bikers on a bike trail if they have, you know, something going on that they're going cross country or stuff like that. That would kind of be lifestyle branding. It's part we're here to help you with your lifestyle, and at the same time, while we're helping you with your lifestyle, then you can actually see our logo as we give you things, and then next time you go to buy a bike, you'll buy it from Harley Davidson. Stuff like that. And they do it all the time. But what these people at Marvel and the other pop culture people think lifestyle branding is that they want to incorporate the lifestyle of the people that work on the comics, and they want to read the comics or read or watch the television shows or movies or whatever. They want to incorporate those lifestyles into the material itself in order to promote such lifestyles. That's not lifestyle branding. That's what they think it is. They're using it in the ass backwards kind of way. Anyways, let's see, scrolling down. Exactly, Gordon. A cute cosplay woman doesn't make you want to read. No, it does not. Those are two different centers to your brain getting activated with those two things. John says, my multimedia promotion is heroic. Heroic Hegel? Get him now? What? I have no idea what you're talking about, John. Quite honestly. Let's see. Scrolling down. Scrolling down. Here's somebody new in the chat. The cartoons that made us. Great to see you here. And we also have Leonidas. How you doing, Leonidas? What is that? Just looking at the anime figure in the background. Kind of looks like it might be from Conan the Detective. Is it? Not entirely sure. Scrolling down. Alessandro says, based on one of your previous videos, RJ, is it possible that there is a hero belonging to a monster race like Saint Christopher the Cynocephalius? I'm not entirely sure. Saint Christopher, I don't know. I don't like using monster races in my books. If you're talking about my books, you're talking about my world, I don't like using monster races. Monsters are monsters. Monsters are to be destroyed. A hero destroys monsters. That's one of the things about Crom the Destroyer is, steel good, magic evil. Monsters evil, humans good. That's one of the basic things about Crom the Destroyer. Scrolling down. Sandra also says, I would like to better understand logic and virtue. What do you recommend? What do I recommend? Let's see. Logic and virtue depends on really your level of understanding and how deep you want to go, Alessandro. If you're talking about virtues itself and you're looking for some, basically most of what we understand about virtue comes from Aristotle, and then you can go into Thomas Aquinas, but those are very dense ways of looking at it. You could go into a very good translation of Aristotle and his logic and probably be able to understand a fairly good part of it. But if you go to something like Yusuf Pieper, he's a German philosopher, and he wrote during basically World War II as he fled Germany. And he actually gives a very down-to-earth understanding and explanation in his short essays, which are compiled into books now, which are translated from the German into English, to help you understand, not so much in a logical way what the virtues are, although that's part of it. He does access it that way as well. But it's very much an understanding of proportions for people who are not too terribly versed within the philosophy and things like that. He does give a lot of indications of that in his footnotes and stuff like that, but he does a beautiful book called there's a lot of good books that he has. Well, actually, again, they're usually compilations of articles that he's done or some of his lectures, but the Four Cardinal Virtues, and he does other ones, like he does specific ones like faith, hope, and love, things like that. There's many of them. But yeah, that's what I would recommend for. It's fairly heavy reading, but you got to go fairly heavy into a lot of these things. There's a lot of good. I don't know. There's a lot of good podcasts and a lot of good stuff you can find on the internet if you go into sites that discuss natural law. That might help you ease into it, because listening to it and to hear people give short explanations of it, which are usually speeches, might help you ease into it. Anyways, scrolling down. George says, that's how you can tell the difference between hand-drawn and AI. Hand-drawn cartoons, the characters have 3 fingers, while AI cartoons have 5 fingers. Yeah, the funny thing is, you want to know what the really funny thing is? I don't know. I have never watched the new version, the new show of Westworld. But if you go back to the original Westworld, which was done when, was it late 60s or early 70s? I think it was late 60s, the Westworld movie. You have these robots which are controlled by an artificial intelligence, and how you're able to distinguish between the real humans in the fantasy world like Westworld and actual humans is you look at their hands. Anyways, scrolling down. Yes, aspect ratio. Thank you very much, Michael. That's what I was talking about. It doesn't have the correct aspect ratio. Sound Engraver says, RJ, I'm happy to recommend you composers you could use as public domain American composers who were prolific in the 1910s and 20s. Oh, very good. I will have to see where my trailer goes with that. And I might contact you, Sound Engraver, if nothing pops out at me when I get to put in the soundtrack. Mutt is here. How you doing, Mutt? Nice to see you. Let's see. Scrolling down just a little more. John is still here. John, don't you have to work tomorrow? I'm writing a comic about a lovable city guy who has to work with a gruff country guy on a YouTube channel. Hi, Jinx and Suze. Yeah, funny, John. Let's see. Although I have to say, John, I don't know if I could. Yeah, okay. You said lovable city guy. I thought you used a different superlative there. Let's see. Scrolling down. Ryan says, RJ, all characters should be designed for production in all forms of media outfits. With too many belts, pockets, ammunition, straps, etc., look good on posters, but are hard and expensive to animate. Oh, definitely, they're hard to animate. This is one of the things I talk about every once in a while. It's like the fact that if you look at comic books, especially when they were doing great, you had a lot of bald characters and characters that use skull caps. Think of Cyclops. Cyclops, in his original form, in his original uniform, he didn't need to use that full head covering, and they didn't once you got into the 90s. But the reason why is because it would save your artist and his hand from having to draw hair on everybody, which is great because he can rip those pages off twice as fast, most likely, if he doesn't have to draw hair on everybody. Maybe the women and make it beautiful, but and things like the X-Men where you got a team book, yeah, that would be murder. And I think that's probably the reason why so many books in the 90s came out late. But anyways, yes, I agree. You should have a medium appropriate visual for your characters, yes, but at the same time, whether or not that's going to translate all the time, you can't make that decision based on what you're going to do with your comic book, because obviously we tried to have real life comic book superhero uniforms within the idiotic movies that came out in the 70s for superheroes, and it just didn't work. It wasn't until the X-Men came out and they revamped the idea of we have to make it look like something that would be in a comic book, that they actually were able to sell the visuals for that character, for those characters, and for that movie, if you ask me. Scrolling down. So it's a balance. Scrolling down. Manny says, the death spiral is what happens when ants go around in circles. Thank you very much. Thank you. Exactly. Mutt says, RJ, when will comic fans start really looking into the indie market? Are fans still attached to the big two? I don't think fans are attached to the big two still, Mutt, honestly. Um, yes and no. I'll put it this way. People are still whales. People still go in and say, I want every last copy of Amazing Spider-Man. I'm still going to buy it. I just don't read it anymore because the stuff is ridiculous. So you still have those people buying books, and that's ridiculous in my opinion. At the same time, I find, and this is just my personal life, so this is not me making um, big statements that are cutting across the swath of everybody, but I find that a lot of comic book readers who have given up on mainstream comics right now and for the last few years don't go to the indie scene. They go to the back of the comic store and to the back stock. That's where they go. And that's where they're spending the same amount of money they would be spending if they were buying new comics. It's basically it. So how we break into that market, I don't know, but I quite honestly don't think that comic stores have very much time left in them. They're going to become a thing of the past within the next 10 to 15 years, I really think. I could be completely wrong. To some extent, I hope I'm completely wrong, but I don't know if breaking into that market is actually going to be necessary, nor is it where you should put all your eggs, because I don't know if it's going to be there in 10 years. But that's where they're going. And right now, if you want to get at them, you're going to have to figure out a way to do it. And putting ads in comics that are coming out in comic stores isn't the way to do it. I've done that. I got nothing from it. So anyway, just my personal experience. So how do we get them to be attracted to indie comics? Build indie comics, and it is built with every successive comic that every indie comic publisher puts out, like real indie comics, like the stuff that we buy and we create. But yeah, we just have to build it up. It's the same thing it's the same mentality. I don't know if it's going to work this way exactly or not, but it's the same mentality I used to build up my other businesses. And my other businesses was just do the work, continue to do the work until your name gets out there and people trust that you have a good product. That's about it. Let's see. Tony says, RJ, what are your thoughts on the Red Sonja film? It was made in the height of EEI and its director came out as trans. I'll just say this, Tony. The visuals that they gave for some of the stills that Red Sonja movie, I got to see. Well, I saw them over, I don't know, it was a year ago or more. The visuals looked good from the stills that they gave. Whether or not that means the story is going to be any good or the film is going to be any good, I don't know. But I really don't think they could do Red Sonja correctly, because Red Sonja is a difficult character to pin down. If you're going with the Robert E. Howard version, it's something completely different than what most people think of as Red Sonja. If you're going with the Marvel version of Red Sonja, then you're going to have to, go with the Marvel rules of basically, I don't know, the 70s version of Red Sonja. If you're going with the Dark Horse version or the other publishers that work with this character, which again is completely, it's like a copy of a copy of a copy. I think that's what you're going to get. I can't say that for sure. I haven't really seen much about the storytelling, but what I think they're going to try to do is, again, you have a copy of a copy of a copy, and it's not going to work. At the very least, though, they did hire a very attractive woman to play Red Sonja, as far as I can tell, and they had someone working on the set designs and the clothing that actually had some merit, and that's just from the stills that I've seen. Whether or not that holds up under the film of a movie, I don't know. Let's see. Scrolling down. Let's see. Scrolling down. Phoenix Wright, Ace Attorney. Maybe that's why I am mixing it up in my head, because I think you're right as well. I don't know, those two seem to come out at the same time in my mind. That and Conan Detective. Let's see. Chris is here. How you doing, Chris? Nice to see you. Herp Derp is here. How you doing? RJ, what would you think about me hiring you to edit a script for my comic? I understand there's always the liability of, hey, what if your property is too similar to something I'm working on? I don't trust me as an editor. I'm sorry, Herb. I don't think I'm a good editor. I for one thing, and someone just pointed this out in my comments in one of the books for the Valiant Heroes, because I trust my editors a little bit too much, apparently, because I can't edit. I certainly can't. Like I have a very huge blind spot. Let's just talk about copy editing right now, because there are different kinds of editing. There's story editing and copy editing. I can't copy edit. I can't. I need to first of all give it to someone else to copy edit, and secondly, I need to be more judicious than the people that I picked to copy edit. But anyway, because quite literally, I started school within the late 70s, early 80s, and they tried to put everything in phonetically, and so my spelling is just atrocious. And then by the time I got to pre-Karens in there saying you can't have our kids learn grammar because everybody's failing it, and therefore we never learned grammar. It was just ridiculous. And then I got into university, and there was these university professors who were coming up from the 70s saying, oh no, we don't need to learn how to spell or grammar. That's all just old hat. Those things are out the window. And I'm thinking, so anyways, I can't edit in those capacities at all. And my ability to story edit, I don't know. I don't think I can story edit either, unless it's my own material, because my own material and story editing there happens in a very unique way that interacts with my very unique way of telling a story. So I don't think I would be good at that, Herb. Let's see. Alessandro says, RJ, I watched a pretty progressive animated series, BoJack Horseman, and one phrase stuck in my head. There is no shame in dying for nothing. That's why most people die. What do you think? There's no shame in dying for nothing. That's why most people die. That sounds pretty nihilistic to me. I don't think people die for nothing. I don't think people want to die for nothing. I think that, let's just put it this way. If you give a man, I don't know about women, maybe women too, but I'll just speak for men right now. If you give a man something to die for, he will die for it, and he will do so happily. So yeah, people are looking for things to die for. Let's just hope, for the sake of our culture and civilization, we can give young men and people in our societies, especially those who are having trouble dealing with reality, something to live for before we give them something to die for. But I don't think that, well, first of all, I don't deal in shame. I deal in guilt. Shame is something that is an old world way of old world pagan way of looking at things. Guilt is a much more specific concept that is attached to truth, whereas shame is attached to what does your society say that you can and can't do. But anyways, I don't really particularly like that statement, Alessandro. Not yours. I'm the one that you quote there. Let's see. Scrolling down. Herp Derp says, obviously, we could talk about that, but I can also guarantee your ideas are not as goofy and silly as mine. Quite honestly, Herp, I think that I need to be more goofy and silly. I think that goofy and silly is kind of what a lot of people want right now. Or are going to want in the near future. Just look at 60s comics and how ridiculous they are. But they weren't ridiculous in the 60s because people were looking for ridiculous and silly. And I think that's an untapped market that I would like to tap into. Let's see. Tony says, RJ, would you agree that Frank Miller and Alan Moore are the chief architects of the deconstruction of mainstream American comics? Well, I would say Alan Moore for sure. Frank Miller, Frank Miller is American. Like Alan Moore is British, and he has a British sensibility, and that British sensibility is based upon a nihilistic atheism. Frank Miller Frank Miller is a lapsed Catholic, if I remember correctly, and someone who grew up in a fairly progressive setting, which was, let's see, I think it was, where was it? What is New England somewhere? Anyways, and then he moved to New York. So Frank Miller, I think, was trying to deconstruct in order to understand. Alan Moore was trying to deconstruct in order to ridicule and to some extent destroy. So Frank Miller, in my mind, although I don't like a lot of the stuff that he had did after leaving, let's say, Daredevil. Um, I think that for the majority of his mainstream comic work, he was like a little kid trying to take apart a toy and see if he can put it back together again. And to me, he wouldn't be one of the chief architects of deconstruction in the negative sense, anyways. But Alan Moore, most definitely. Let's see. Logic's Finest says, RJ, I'm seriously concerned about Gen Z. They are so woke, anxious, snarky, and nihilistic. I hope they don't toss away the world because of them. Reality didn't start till 1992 and want to remake the earth. Yeah, here's the thing. I think that, well, let me put it this way. I think that the newer generation, possibly Generation Alpha, and the generations around Generation Alpha are going to be so based and so full of meaning if they're allowed to be who they strive to be, that people like Gen Z are just going to fade away into obscurity. Let's just put it that way. It's really weird because the same thing happened with Gen X. Like, I have people, like, I don't know if anybody experienced this, if you're Gen X or not, but I had people in my life when I was, let's say, in high school and university, and they wanted to become a religious, really. They wanted to join religious communities, like become monks or nuns, right? And then they would go and see these kumbaya 70s, 60s hippie nuns, or I don't know, monks, and they would look at it and go, no, that's not what I want. That's not what I want at all. I want something devout. I want something where purpose is just ingrained in every last movement that you do, not this hippy dippy kind of crap that they're pushing in some of these so-called religious communities. And for Gen X, those kinds of people were few and far between, but they were still there. I don't think Gen Z has that in them, but I do think that Gen Alpha is going to be hyper directed in that direction, hyper pointed towards that direction. Quite honestly, they want seriousness, they want devotion, they want a connection to something larger, they want truth, and you can see, looking at the world around us, why they are starved for that, and I think are going to lead the way. Let's see. Nick says, RJ, what do you think of the new Superman and Fantastic Four movie trailers? Ignoring the poor casting of Reed Richards, do you think it is possible these films would be half decent and non-woke? I don't know about the Superman one. I quite seriously have not been able. I mean, I've run across it hundreds of times, but I just didn't click on it because it just is not appealing to me. I don't know if that's any indication of whether or not it's going to be any good. The Fantastic Four trailer I have seen, and it seems to get, again, it seems to be playing off of nostalgia more than a actual understanding of the property itself, which is an indication to me anyways that it's not going to work correctly. I wish it would, but nostalgia doesn't draw people in, doesn't let them feel good about parting with their money. Let's put it that way. Let's see, scrolling down. So I don't have very good hopes for Superman. I don't have very good hopes for the Fantastic Four either. But again, I could be completely wrong. This is only very, very limited amount of exposure to what they're going to be and what they look like so far. Scrolling down. Let's see, scrolling down. Vaz is here. How you doing, Vaz? Had the stream set up in the background, but I forgot to press play. You sound like me, Ves. Let's see. Scrolling down. People talking about Super Saiyans in the chat. Let's see what else we got here. Yeah, Zach Dan, exactly. Make the men bald and give women hats or hoods. Brilliant. Exactly. I mean, like a character that I'm working on, which is Artemis, right? Now, I have the character in two different phases. I have an Artemis book that I'm working on, and Artemis is, well, basically, she was introduced within the Valiant Heroes #1. It was a silent story for, I think, 7 pages, 8 pages. Anyways, she's one of the proteges of Cardinal, which was one of my characters. Cardinal has a hood, and she puts it up because she has this long hair. Same with Artemis. Artemis wears a hood. Why? Because I looked at the character and I looked at Renzo and I said, Renzo, I'm not, because the character is based upon a visual of a teenage version of Elektra. With curly hair, so basically Greek looking, according to Marvel Comics anyway. So I said, Renzo, yes, you're going to have to draw this girl with the curly blonde, no, curly long hair every once in a while, but I'm going to put a hood on her so you don't have to draw this hair all the time, because that would be asking too much of you. So you're absolutely right, Zach. Scrolling down. Let's see, scrolling down. Gordon says, black comic fans used to wonder why so many black male hero characters were drawn bald. Because it's easy to draw. You basically have to do your outline and then just trace over it. Let's see. Alpha Channel, how you doing? Alpha Channel. Okay. I think I've seen you on Twitter, Alpha. Scrolling down. Let's see if there's any more comments that are directed towards me. Leonidas says, RJ, I wanted to read almost all old Marvel comics. Where should I stop before everything becomes trash? 1996. Oh, I'm sorry. Was I too fast with that answer? 1996. When I think it's Heroes Reborn became a thing within Marvel Comics, just stop. That would be my advice. There are some books after that, that you can pick through and are good if you want to, but let's just say going through that time period and not having someone to direct you to exact things that are good in the time periods after 1996, you're reading more trash than good stuff. So it depends on what kind of time you have. If you have time to sift through trash, you go right ahead, but you'll find some good books after that every once in a while. But if you value your time more than I want to sift through trash to find a good book every now and then, stop, and as soon as you hit a Heroes Reborn. That's it. Let's see, scrolling down, and don't read Heroes Reborn. I'm not saying read it and then stop. I'm saying as soon as it starts, you're done. And quite honestly, I have said this a number of times, and people seem to think that I'm crazy, but I'm not. We were told when Heroes Reborn came out from Marvel Comics over and over again, this is the new Marvel Comics. This is the way we're rebooting the entire universe, and this is the way it's going to be. Everything that is up until now is gone. And I don't know. That only lasted for, 6 months until they had to go back. It's like New Coke, the people hated it so much they had to change it back. But yeah, they crossed the Rubicon there. Let's see, scrolling down. Zakdan says, fortitude and justice tend to action, moderation and prudence tend towards inaction. Fortitude and moderation focus inward, while justice and prudence focus outward. Okay, Zakdan, I'm not entirely sure who that comment is directed at, but it is a nice little a nice little statement of the beauty of virtue right there. Let's see, scrolling down. Logic says, comic shops aren't even comic shops anymore. They are pop culture, Funko Pop, anime, manga shops that have 25% comics. Shops like Midtown Comics in Manhattan, i.e., massive floor space, will survive? Well, we'll see. We will see, depending on whether or not. I honestly think what is going on with Diamond right now and the comic distribution is going to break the comic shops. That's what I think is going to happen. It's not going to be the comics themselves and their massive stupidity of what they're putting in the comics. It's going to be the distribution system that is going to be the point of failure. Let's see. Scrolling down. Let's see. George says, I saw the promo and she is wearing a metal bikini. So, yeah. I don't know if you could do, what is it? It's not even scale mail. Is it scale mail that she wears? I don't know. It's not a ring mail. I suppose it would have to be scale mail. It's more of a coin mail, if anything. Let's see. But again, whether or not you could actually make that work on the screen is something else entirely. Scrolling down. Greg says, instead of readers, they focused on collectors back when we were kids. It was something you got on a 3 to 6 hour road trip. Others were just read and given away or traded. Yeah. Quite honestly, I hate to admit this, and I don't know this for sure because I was a very young kid, but I think that we actually had the first appearance of Wolverine within our comics, and we took that with a huge pile of comics with us when we went camping with a bunch of our friends, and they just got destroyed. Like literally everybody read them, and then they were all banged and beaten up, but then the water came into the tent and every last comic got drenched and we just threw them all away. But yeah, that we weren't collectors, we were readers. That's what it was. We were readers. Scrolling down. Let's see what else we got. Logic says Marvel and DC are ideologically captured by social ideology activists masquerading as writers. Exactly right. They hate canon and want to make their fan fiction based on their virtue signaling only. You are correct. Nail on the head there, Logic. Let's see. Scrolling down. Scrolling down. See if there's any other comments for me. Scrolling down. Gordon says, genuine fun can be fun, but it irks me when grown men use that word to try to describe things they like. I don't know why. Mutt has a question, I think. Mutt says, RJ, has Frank Miller tarnished his artistic reputation with his recent Marvel covers? I did an entire video on this, Mutt. I would say yes and no. First of all, Frank Miller is getting pretty old. He's getting up there. Whether or not he can manipulate the pen and the brush like he used to be able to, I don't know. I really don't. I would say I will give him the benefit of the doubt and say that he can. But again, I think that, I don't know, with the kinds of artists that I would pair with Frank Miller, because quite honestly, I would take someone like Walter Simonson and pair him with Frank Miller. Why? Because they both use geometrical shapes within trying to draw something like a human form. And those geometrical shapes don't actually fit within the, let's just say, the realistic version of the human form, but they do work within proportionality. And I think that Frank Miller is trying to do something with shapes that is a hyper extension of that sort of mindset that he is using in order to use geometrical shapes for the proportionality that work better for him anyways. And another person would be Jack Kirby to use this exact way of thinking, to use that again, not to be an artist, but to be someone who depends on their style as what brings their art to life. Because again, Jack Kirby knew this and he stated it many times. He said, I'm not a very good artist, but it is my style that people are attracted to. And he's exactly right. And I would say the same with Frank Miller. I would say the same with Walter Simonson. I love Walter Simonson art, but it is his style. And the same with Frank Miller. And so he's playing with his style. In a hyper extension of the geometrical shapes make up a human body way. So I could see the artistic, I don't know, journey there. I could see the artistic experimentation there as having some merit for the artist himself, but whether or not it has any merit for the reader, and especially the readers of comic books today, when they aren't versed enough within sequential art in order to understand what's going on, I think that's where the hurt occurs. To me, they're ugly. And to me, I wouldn't buy them. I can tell you right now. But again, I can see the artistic version of why he's trying to do it, in my mind anyways. But again, yeah, the combination of the fact that he's trying to manipulate his style when a lot of people don't actually understand what his style is because they just didn't grow up like we did, most probably, reading, Daredevil that was drawn by Frank Miller. You have to understand, you have to be immersed in someone's style if they're a style-based artist. If the style-based artist becomes irrelevant to your medium in which you're working, then their extension of their style is simply going to hurt them. I don't know. That's just my opinion. Because, I'm not an artist. That's just my opinion. I wish I knew more about art in order to understand and answer that question in a better way. Let's see. Fast says, I kind of gave up on Miller when he released Dark Knight Returns too. There you go. Let's see. Scrolling down. Zach Dan says, is it possible to mix whimsy with touching? Yeah, definitely. I think, I don't know. A lot of movies do that anyways. You look at, I say 90s movies. There's whimsical and touching 80s and 90s movies. But again, as I always say, that would take a form of, well, it's not really humor, but it's an offshoot of humor because, again, I always go back to the Aristotelian way of describing what humor is. Humor is a version of the absurd and the grotesque, which prompts a sudden reaction within the human mind, psyche, body, whatever, that you don't know what to do, so you laugh. But whimsy is something that brushes up against humor, and it brushes up against humor not to the extent that it's absurd, but is fanciful. But as I always, the reason I'm talking about that is because I think humor needs to go back to a humor for everybody. A clown that is making fun of themselves in order to get the audience to laugh, not a character that is making fun of some part of the audience in order to make another part of the audience laugh. That's where whimsy comes in. And yes, it can be touching. Just go back to when you say whimsical and touching, I just think of people like Bob Hope or Danny Kaye. Let's see. Scrolling down. Exactly, Gordon. Gordon says Miller could also not deconstruct when necessary. Exactly. I agree. Let's see. George also says Frank Miller did a lot of comics, but the only thing I can remember of his work is Daredevil 300 and Sin City. He has some really good. His Daredevil stuff is next level. But again, that might just be me and my brother's Daredevil collection talking. Let's see. Zakdan says, I think a lot of Gen Z are rejecting wokeness. Whether they turn to truth is a bit of an open question. Yeah. Whether they have the capacity to turn to truth, I don't know. Because here's the thing. One, I don't know who said the comment above Zach Dan, but they included anxiousness in that. And anxiousness is something that happens with basically a poor upbringing. You don't get to bond to people correctly. And I'm actually going to go into some of that with, I think, my Saturday video. But the thing is that anxiousness kills truth because it kills trust. And as I always say, truth and trust go hand in hand. If you can't trust, then you're not getting to the truth. And these people have been so manipulated into an anxious way of looking at the world that they just can't trust. Their bodies won't let them. They're flooded with negative what chemicals within their body every time they're asked to trust something. So I don't think a lot of them will get to truth. Let's see. Scrolling down. Logic says, RJ, I disagree. Alan Moore was making social commentary, but he used a second allegory of deconstruction on top of his obvious allegory. He wasn't deconstructing, just double allegory to hide the message. Okay. I don't know. I wouldn't. Let me put it this way, Logic. The distaste, the bad taste of Alan Moore stories in my mouth, starting with even his Captain Britain stuff, led me to a place where I wouldn't want to even delve into it enough to actually see whether or not what you're saying is true. It's like, yeah, I got better things to do with my time. Let's see. Alessandro says, RJ, I wanted to ask you, in human nature, is human nature evil or just imperfect? Human nature is not evil, obviously, as far as I'm concerned, because God, well, human nature, if you're going into the divine way of looking at human nature as created by God, God is all good. God can't create anything evil. Human nature is not evil. It's just, and imperfect is not the word for it. It is disordered, disordered through our own sinfulness, basically. Disordered is the word you would use. Let's see. Question mark is here and says, RJ, what are your thoughts on using animated GIFs for promotion, and what do you think about using image plus text memes? Actually, I think memes might be an untapped resource for promotion, quite honestly. Nothing that I could actually use, I would say, but yeah, I think that using animated GIFs, certainly. Basically, some of the stuff that I use within the Filmora that I use, they're basically animated GIFs, I guess. I animate some of the material that I have in order to try to get it to work within my promotion. So yeah, it does work. And it doesn't need AI in order to get an animated GIF, whatever you want to call it. Scrolling down. Gordon Brother says, who has nostalgia for the Fantastic Four? I do. I love the Fantastic Four. When that was the first book that became my book, and it was in the early 80s. And I went back and bought Fantastic Four as far back as the 60s. So yeah, I have nostalgia for the Fantastic Four. Sound Engraver says, I am a teacher and most of my students are conscientious and want to do well by their peers and mentors. That's good to hear. Let's see. Scrolling down. I think, what is the time? I've been talking for an hour and 13 minutes. So I'm probably going to start going a little bit faster through the chat to see if I'm even close to the end. Let's see. Scrolling down. Let's see. Scrolling down to see if there's anything specifically directed towards me. Yeah, Michael says, what happened in 1996? Yeah, Heroes Reborn happened. Let's see. If I'm that far behind, I better get moving here. Let's see. Scrolling down. Zach Dan does have a comment, says, imperfect is not quite imperfect. Animals are imperfect, but also not moral agents, generally considered innocent. I'm sorry, but I think I'm coming in halfway within this conversation. Scrolling down. Logic's finest. Boom, all of Marvel Comics died in 1996. Civil War was the final nail in the coffin. Yeah. Scrolling down. Tony says, RJ, I remember there was quite a bit of progressiveness in the 80s comics that I read as a small child. Would you agree that Gold and Silver Bronze Age books are better? No, I wouldn't agree. I would say that there is quite definitely, you are absolutely 100% right. There's plenty of progressiveness within 80s comics. But that being said, 70s and 60s comics were not taken seriously because the people writing them didn't take themselves seriously, quite honestly. And to my sensibility, that's not something that is going to better comics. And if you look at the old stuff, the golden age stuff, again, that had more of a serious quality to it, but at the same time, I don't know if you could call them better at the same time, because yes, it was a better quality comic than anything you were going to get in the 60s and the 70s. And I would say even the 50s was pretty campy, to say the least. But you go within the 40s and the 50s, and they're still trying to figure out how the medium works. And it's laudable and it's beautiful to see. And it's something that, if you're looking through the history of comics, would be great. But it didn't allow the flourishing of the medium in the way that it did in the 80s. Now, did I wish that there was all of that progressiveness out of the comics in the 80s? Yes. But you got to see the flower of virtue, if I could put it that way, like an apple tree, not in full bloom, but in full fruit. I think within the 80s, because you got to see the medium of comic books step into its own, to be able to have a fully formed idea of what can be done and what boundaries can be pushed, and within, creating art, not in a progressive sense, but in a artistic sense, and what the medium could do. So that's why I think the 80s are better, quite honestly. Not to say, again, I don't like the campy part of the 50s and the 60s and the 70s. It just made for the most awful reading imaginable for some of those comics. But again, the very early golden age, they're still trying to find their footing. So, that has its own problems, although it's a beautiful thing to witness. Ryan says, RJ, would you rather have your hero cinematic universe produced as a live action or animated feature films for theaters? If animated, would it be 2D or 3D? Ryan, let me put it this way. I don't care. I don't want to think about those things. I want to think about comics. I don't even even think I will put the brain power into figuring out whether or not which of these choices I would want to have, because comics is the best medium. If you ask me, comics is the best medium. And I'll just focus on comics. Thank you very much. Let's see. Scrolling down. Logic's Finest says, Heroes Reborn is an abomination, and Brian Michael Bendis is patient zero for woke Marvel. There you go. Let's see. Scrolling down, see if there's any other comments for me, to see if I can get anywhere close to the end of the chat. Gordon says, RJ used a rolled up Incredible Hulk 181 as a breathing reed. Yeah. I'm pretty sure we had it. I can't say for sure, but I'm pretty sure we destroyed it. Let's see. Scrolling down. Scrolling down. Yeah, Gordon also says, respectfully, Frank's posture looks like he draws. Yeah. Frank's getting up there. It happens to everybody. Let's see. Scrolling down. See if there's any more comments for me. This is the part of the chat where I'm not entirely sure. There are so many conversations going on between people, not entirely sure what is for me and what isn't. Scrolling down. Gordon says, RJ affected by an anti-Moore equation. Yes. Anti-life equation, yes. Vaz says, RJ, since the title is multimedia promotion and I missed the beginning, the two voice actors for your trailers are really good. Well, thank you. I don't even, I can't remember their names. I have it written down in some things, but took me a while to find them. Let's see. Gordon says, does your comic book nostalgia make you care about a Fantastic Four movie? No, it doesn't. The answer to the question, if that's what you were asking, Gordon, no, it doesn't. I think the peak nostalgia that I had was one of the worst Marvel movies that had come out, which is the Phoenix X-Men, the X-Men where where Jean Grey becomes a Phoenix. That was a bad movie, but it pretty much brought me to tears when I saw her walk out from that ledge with the Phoenix Force, because X-Men was my book for so many years. To see that up on the screen, that was peak nostalgia for me. To see it in a format where everybody and their dog was coming to see this movie. But no, at this point, it's like, oh, a Fantastic Four movie's coming out. Yeah. I don't think I'll really make any effort to go see it. If I'm going to the movies and it's there and there's nothing else good in, maybe I'll watch it. That's about it. Ryan says, RJ, in history, we have seen religious persecution disguised as heroism. Where do heroes draw the line between defending morals based on Christianity while protecting religious and social freedoms? Quite honestly, I don't know if I can answer that question in a very adequate manner, Ryan. But if you look at the history of most of Christianity, protecting religious and social freedoms was not part of the plan. Just straight up telling you that as a Christian. It's a very, both of those things are very, very new concepts. So in the time when virtues were in full swing, when you had things like virtuous knights, the idea of religious freedom was thought of as an evil, and social freedom, that was thought of as an evil as well. Scrolling down, see if there's anything else for me. Let's see. I apologize to anybody if I'm missing your comment that is directed towards me, but I've been talking for almost an hour and a half. And I was on John's channel before this, so my voice is starting to go a little bit. Logic says, RJ, same with V for Vendetta and Frank Herbert's Dune novels. Humans crave to be led and oppressed and use religion or politics to do so. Allegory hides that social commentary. Well, Logic, you've hit two properties which I am not fans of. Not a fan of either of those properties. Yeah, V for Vendetta. I don't know. I think it besmirched the good name of Guy Fawkes to begin with. And secondly, I'm not entirely sure the guy who is the main character in V for Vendetta is actually a good guy, quite honestly. And Frank Herbert's Dune, yeah, Frank Herbert's Dune is, I don't even know if I can get into the complexities of the gaslighting going on in Frank Herbert's Dune. For me anyways. Herp Derp says, RJ, don't want to keep you here all night, but I'd love it if you'd do a video examining the idea of liberal equals creative, conservative equals, dull? No. I'll quite honestly, Herp Derp, I will be touching on those. I will be touching on that within this week's Saturday video. I don't think the whole video will not be about that, but I will be touching on those ideas. Let's see. Scrolling down. Logic says, I missed his comment on Watchmen and Silver Surfer parable. Again, Watchmen is not a property I like. Silver Surfer, yeah, it is a parable. He is basically an angel. That's what Jack Kirby built him as, because he took a Galactus and said, what would happen if God appeared, and what would he look like? And that would be Galactus. And then what would happen if an angel appeared? And that would be the angel for the Galactus God is Silver Surfer. So yeah, I could see for that. Yeah, that has very religious connotations and is an exploration of of that idea. That I can get behind. Zach Dan says, I think religious and political freedom was mainly a Protestant thing eventually. No offense to anybody. Yeah, I think you're right. Logic says, RJ, they are unpleasant topics because they force people to question their mindset, and introspection is the hardest thing on earth. Okay. Well, I could see the value in that, but I can also put it in this way. I think that there are enough things in the world at every age, in every society, to hurt and distort what people need and what keeps them healthy, so that in order for them to have some introspection doesn't take pointing out untrue unpleasantness. Let me put it that way. Doesn't take unpleasantness to the extent that you have to make stuff up. You can use just plain old humanity in order to look at some unpleasant things and have someone do the unpleasant work of having to be looking at themselves in a hard way with introspection. But again, to me, the ideas of like Dune, those aren't based on reality. They're based on much more of a fantastical. It's like I always say, that idiotic movie AI. Um, they took a what if, and then they built on that what if another what if, based a logical if then. So they took a logical if then, and from the answer to that first if then, they built another if then, and then from the answer of that if then, they built another if then, and they went like 5, 6, 7, and it doesn't become a good reflection of reality in a logical and rational description of reality, which is what is at the heart of good storytelling. If you do that, it doesn't. And I think that things like Frank Herbert's Dune does that as well. And I think that a lot of Frank Miller's stuff does that as well. They're not grounded enough as authors in the reality of their humanity in order to write stories that can challenge humanity in that direction, quite honestly. And I know that's probably sacrilege to a lot of people, but that's my thought on it. All right, one last comment before I go. How you doing, Knight? I don't think I've seen you here before, Sir Knight. Sir Knight says, RJ, I think you could have a fun conversation about storytelling and humanity with Pilgrim's Pass. He is a South American Catholic. No, he's not a Catholic. Who covers human nature using storytelling as a springboard. No, if I remember correctly, Pilgrim's Pass was written not by a Catholic. He was written by, I don't know what he was, but he wasn't a Catholic, as far as I remember correctly. And we were made read that story, I think, in like grade 7. So, we had to delve into that kind of stuff with the allegory and all that kind of stuff. It's something that I struggled through in grade 7. I don't know if I want to do it again. Let's see. All right. Well, that is the end of the chat. Well, Logic's Finest has one more. We'll give you this, Logic's Finest. RJ, you look at things from a bright, happy point of view, not so much as more realistic. Fair enough. We shall agree to disagree. Well, that is a good place for us to stop. And thank you very much for all of your questions and comments, Logic's Finest, and everyone else who was here. We had 30 plus, almost 40 people in the chat at once. That's pretty good. I mean, I get about 600 views on these Make Comics Fun Again little spiels that I go off of, but and that's great to see. But I love to see people here live. And quite honestly, this is one of the things I'm going to talk about in my Saturday video. A lot of the things that I do is I just have random thoughts in my head that are so complex that I have to get them out and try to speak them to see if they have any continuity to them. And that's what I do with a lot of my videos, especially what I do with my, Wednesday videos like this. And the reason why, in part, I do it is to bounce these ideas off of you guys so that you can poke holes in them, and because that will help me understand them better and come to a better understanding. So it's basically the what do you call it? the merit-based system of ideas where all the ideas fight together. That's what I'm trying to do. That's why I'm a gadfly on the social, what do you call it, town square of YouTube. So thank you very much, everyone, for commenting and coming here live and giving me something new to think about with your comments. And I will leave you all with the short 45-second trailer for Crom the Destroyer. I'm hoping that within the next couple of weeks, I will have the trailer for Fate Blue for you, and we will move into that. I think I'm going to open up the Indiegogo sign up page anyways for Fate Blue come the end of this month, 1st of March. I'm hoping that that's the time frame. So we will have a new trailer and we will have a new Indiegogo page ready for signing up within a couple of weeks at the latest. So look forward to that. And thank you very much, everyone, for showing up again. I'll see you all later. Bye.
No matter how many wars you fight, no matter how much blood you shed, no matter how much rage you loose, no matter how many demons you face, no matter how many companions you lose, no matter if our kingdom falls, I know that you will return to me in honor.